Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Mana on the Rocks. It is I, a bald man, Joe. Joining me this week, we have another local brew. So we're bringing on our local Zada expert. Tyler, I've been hearing some stuff on the streets. Zada's been doing something, right?
Yeah, Zada's gone to a couple major CEDH events and has done terrible, awful things to some of the best decks in the format.
Damn, that sounds insane. No Atlas this week. Atlas is out there busy grinding, so we're holding it down for our boy. But in the meantime, you should come on down and get a drink with us. We'll talk about what happened to what did Zada do? Why Zada?
I play Zada because it is unironically the sleepiest agent of all the sleeper agent decks.
Okay.
You sit down at a table, someone looks you dead in the eyes and goes, who's your commander? And I say Zada, and then they go, who? And then I have to explain to them how the card works, but the tech is you explain it poorly so they don't know what you think is going on, which is part of that mid-tier cheese that I've really tried to grasp onto with this deck.
Okay, so we're just this is the cheese factory deck. We're just trying to cheese wins. Then that's kind of like the idea.
We're trying to cheese wins, but in the most honest way. Like I'm playing mono red. There's no show and tell crap. There's no that Tyvar deck that does mass polymorph into Thoracle Leveler. I'm just trying to play the most honest game possible until it's way too late to be honest.
Okay. Well, let's kind of break down Zada for a minute, just like as a card itself. So, Zada Hedron Grinder is a 3/3 Goblin ally. He's an ally. For three for three in a red. And he says, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery that targets only Zada, copy that spell for each other creature you control. That spell could target each copy targets a different one of those creatures. So, if I'm understanding this card correctly, essentially what we're doing is we're targeting Zada with a spell, and then in theory we have a mass of creatures or tokens, and then that spell copies, right?
Correct.
Okay. What kind of spells are we usually trying to target Zada with?
Most of the time, any spell that we can get away with, because the list is so tight. I have very few dead cards when it comes to targets for Zada.
Mhm.
So the cream and the crop, the creme de la creme, the if I see it in my hand, chef's kiss is Crimson Wisp.
Okay.
Target creature becomes red and gains haste till end of turn. Dead text on the card. Other than haste, the haste sometimes matters. But that right there, that second line, that says draw a card.
Okay.
So
Okay.
let's say I've got 4 creatures and a Zada.
Mhm.
I go cast Crimson Wisp, targeting Zada, trigger. Priority must pass on the trigger. The trigger will resolve. I will then get 4 copies of Crimson Wisp, all on the stack, all targeting an individual creature I control, and they all resolve one at a time.
Okay. So we're storming off with Zada essentially.
We're trying to cast 1 mana Adnos, essentially.
Okay.
That costs
Okay.
me no life.
Okay, I can get behind that. No, and I've seen you whip this deck out, and if Zada sticks and you have 3-4 creatures on the ground, you just win basically. And at a certain point, every time I see you storm off, it's like we can kill the Zada right now. It doesn't matter. The trigger's already on the stack. It's gonna resolve. No one runs stifles. You can't stop it. Because you're going to hit a ritual and you're just going to recast Zada, so that removal spell doesn't really do much, right?
Yeah, so, that goes into the only 2 ways to really stop the deck. The one I think is the most cringe, why would you run that card? Silence. Silence stops me pretty dead in my tracks 90% of the time, but you also have to silence, and it feels really bad because this deck is really undeterministic.
Okay.
This deck is super undeterministic. The reason I say that is if I've got 4, even 5 creatures, my first Crimson Wisp effect might not hit a second one.
Mm-hmm.
It might make more token generators. It might hit me more rituals. It might hit quote unquote dead cards on my combo turn, like Claim the Firstborn, Path of the Pyromancer. I might hit some like utility creatures, and it happens a lot.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is the second one never fails. I think like the critical mass number for like my first cantrip to be guaranteed is like 7 or 8. I think it's 8 with all the testing I've done. But after the first one, if I get another turn, my critical mass number is 4. It drops by half just because of all the deck thinning I can do between then and now, and then just the sheer density of like these cantrips that I'm able to run, because I'm running 13 true cantrips and 15 pseudo cantrips. So like Samut Spirit is a pseudo cantrip that scries, and then Spark of Creativity exiles the card and then I can cast it. So, and I count these as pseudo cantrips because, you know, under the right circumstance, under a Dranith Magistrate, or I'm obviously not able to draw the card with Samut Spirit after I've scryed 13 times,
Mm-hmm.
but I can put the perfect card on top, which is really helpful.
Mm-hmm. So the 13, the 15, are those inclusive or are those exclusive of each other? Like those are separate numbers, or
Yeah, so
okay,
it's 13 ones that straight up just say draw a card,
okay,
and then there are 2 more that have similar effects to draw or thinning or some sort of, with Samut Spirit and then the Spark of Creativity.
gotcha. So we're looking at 15 cantrips total in the deck, not 28. I guess was my question.
Yes, 15.
Okay,
Yeah, my bad.
Okay, no, you're good. I'm just trying to make sure I understand the math, because we'll kind of do the card by card, but we're probably going to try and breeze through some of those, because a lot of the time the only text that we care about on the card is that it says draw a card as a separate ability. I think that's like the only requirement for a spell to quote unquote be a Zada card, right? Is like it needs that separate line where it says draw card, right?
It needs to target and say draw a card, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Though a lot of them aren't completely dead and have some utility, which is, you know, and we'll get there when we get there.
For sure. I would like to ask, like, okay, so we're drawing a lot of cards, we're generating a lot of storm, we're in theory hitting like a couple of big rituals. Like I already see like a Brightstone ritual in here, you know, Battle Hymn, stuff like that, like really, really big payoff cards that are gonna, you know, kind of keep us afloat. But how do we win the game?
Depends. Are we main phase 1 or main phase 2?
Oh, we have options.
Oh yeah.
Oh, this menu comes with choices and option. Garcon, please tell me more.
Dude, let me tell you. So I am a mono red deck.
Mhm.
I cannot express that enough. I'm very limited on the sauce that I can implement. So obviously dual caster mage twin flame. Mono red,
bread and butter.
classic staple. If you're playing mono red and you're not on that win con, you're playing a stacks list and you're Magda and you suck and everyone knows what you're doing and no one knows that I'm doing.
True.
The honest to God beatdown plan is also pretty fair. I have won a couple games with that. Generate 14, 15, 20, 40 tokens, Samut Spirit targeting Zada, go to combat. Very true and honest way to win the game.
Okay.
There are some spicier ways to win the game. As like final win cons, there is Fist of Flame. And I'll read that card. Fist of Flames is a 2 mana instant common it's a 1 in a red common instant, and it says draw a card. Until end of turn, target creature gains trample and gets +1/+0 for each card you've drawn this turn.
Oh man, we're running how many cantrips did we say? 15 roughly? 13,
Yeah.
13 cantrips? That's
13 that draw me cards.
That seems insane.
Yeah. So if I have 5 creatures, or even worst case scenario, 4 creatures, and I've cantripped 2 or 3 times, and then Fist of Flame in the middle of combat when you're not blocking because all I'm hitting you with is a 1/1 token, and you declare no blocks, and I Fist of Flame in response. I have killed people from full health with this card.
That's insane. I love that so much.
One shot by a 1/1 Gobble Boy.
Yeah.
That's what happened.
I fucking love that. That's incredible. Okay, cool. And then I'm also seeing a Storm Classic. We got Aetherflux Reservoir.
Yeah,
It
so
seems pretty at home here.
If you can't win before main phase 1, you gotta trigger you got to trigger the loyal apprentice, or you got some shenanigans you want to do with one of your Krankos. I get it. You need to be able to win the game post combat.
Hmm.
And that is where Aetherflux Reservoir comes into play. If I'm already a Storm deck and I'm already casting lots of spells, I will get to 150 life with this Aetherflux Reservoir. Especially because I'm playing the classic mono red combo of Treasonous Ogre plus Aetherflux Reservoir.
That's sick. There's so many one
So
drops in this deck. That seems like a really good combo.
I essentially have infinite mana if I can get to a storm of like 6 with my Treasonous Ogre out. I'm also on Stormkiln Artist to generate lots and lots and lots of silly mana.
Hmm. It
Um,
seems really good.
and then I'd like to point out Path of the Pyromancer, a newer card
Yeah.
that I think has honestly been slept on. I think the like reasonable argument on why most red decks on Underworld Breach might not want to be playing them is because most of the red decks on Underworld Breach that are using Breach as a combo card really are Adnaz decks, and this is a 5 CMC card.
Hmm.
But if you're not on Adnaz, even if you have access to blue and have brain freeze, I would still personally be on Path of the Pyromancer. It is LED at home. So it is a 4 and a red sorcery, rare, and it says discard all of the cards in your hand. Add 1 red mana for each card discarded this way. Then draw that many cards plus 1. So let's say, you pay 5, discard your hand that has 5, make 5, draw 6. Cast it again. Do the exact same thing. You get to do the Brain Freeze LED combo all in one card. It's really nice, and it doesn't get hit by oof effects, which is the biggest reason I'm on it. Is I'm on a lot of different ways to continue ritualing and cantripping with through an oof,
Hmm.
because seldomly am I ever in the position where I want to remove an oof, because usually the oof is what's holding the real winning player down. So I really worked hard to make this list runnable through as many different like stacks piece and bad interactions as possible. I can win without using my graveyard. I can win through a rule of law. I can win through a lot of different things. And it's come down to just like a lot of player skill and evaluation.
Okay. I would love to hear how you win through Rule of Law, because like this is like Storm, and classically like Storm doesn't win through Rule of Law. Rule of Law says, "Cool, go next."
So I'd like to point out that I am on Possibility Storm real
Ah,
quick before to fully answer that question.
ah.
So the way Zada works is I cast the spell, and as the spell is cast, a trigger gets put on the stack. Now you can counter the spell, you can exile the spell, you can put it in my hand, you can put it back in my hand to the bottom of my library. It does not matter. The trigger will forever and always remember the name and the effect of the spell. So I cast Zada from the command zone, I jam a Possibility Storm, and I cast a cantrip. I get to then recast another cantrip, hopefully, or any instant or any sorcery or whatever I hit off of the Possibility Storm.
Mhm,
But my trigger remains on the stack. So I'm going to copy it. So I'm going to get my draw 7 no matter what I hit off of the next Possibility Storm.
mhm.
So Into a Rule of Law is kind of the same idea. Is for every one spell you're casting, I'm actually casting 7, 8, 9. And in a Rule of Law game, people are spending their removal on the stacks pieces. So my Cranko Tin Street Kingpin is going to get multi attacks in. My Cranko Mob Boss is going to continue to make big, big, big creatures. And then my 2 bombs are the Samut Spirit and the Fist of Flames that win me through the Rule of Law.
You just
But
punch them
if
out.
I see, yeah, I combat is a very real way to win CEDH games. And under a Rule of Law, I'm just going to do that, or they're going to board wipe, which is the exact same thing as me getting rid of the Rule of Law.
Mhm.
So I win through a Rule of Law a lot more often than the Rule of Law player does, which is really funny.
That's Yeah, but like even if like you're stuck just grinding, like you said, like you're casting your 1 mana, 2 mana cantrip, sure that's your one spell for the turn, but you're still drawing 6, 7 cards. Like you're on ways to remove the rule of law effects. Like you're going to find them eventually, or you're just gonna, like you said, make enough big dudes that your one pump spell is just gonna knock out the crucial player that will free you from the stacks.
Yeah, I mean, I make the joke a lot. Like, the name of the card is Hedron Grinder for a reason.
Hmm.
Like, I'm playing such low card quality because I'm playing Zada that I can get away with drawing so many more cards than my opponents. Kind of going back to that like mid-tier cheese thing.
Hmm.
If the board's locked, everyone's stuck casting one spell. No one is going to care that I'm casting an expedite.
Yeah,
People go, yeah, it sucks that you're drawing a bunch of cards, but me as a player and my politicking always gets to go back on. I'm mono red. My win cons are Aetherflux Reservoir, dual caster mage twin flame. Like, I have to cast two spells. Like, yes, me drawing all of these cards is scary, but remember I'm mono red, and then before it's too late, you know,
doesn't matter.
it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like when someone else has 17 1/1s with a Cranko out, like how do you beat that if you're locked out? Because I'm never trying to remove a stacks piece.
Hmm. Hmm. That makes a lot of sense. All right. Well, enough of gab. Let's kind of start diving into these cards. So, starting off with the creature base, we got some basic ones. Ragavan, Dockside, red card, good. Play red card. Nothing crazy there. Dreadhorde Arcanist is pretty sick. I like this inclusion a lot. You are on like an infinite amount of one drop cantrips that this guy swings in, gets a cast, and just retriggers Zada, right? I'm not missing anything crazy with this guy.
Yep. Sometimes he gets pumped to cast a 2 mana cantrip, but yeah, that's pretty much it.
Fair enough. All right. We got Goblin Instigator. Makes dudes pretty similar. I'm breezing through some of these cards. Instigator is 1 red for a Goblin, 1/1. He enters the battlefield, makes a 1/1 Goblin. So it's just you need bodies on the battlefield. So this puts bodies on the battlefield, and
Yeah.
you like goblins, so that makes sense. Iron Mirror, we're mono red, we need ramp, and it's a creature, so pumps the Zada. Makes sense. Loyal Apprentice seems disgusting in this deck.
I mean, there's nothing more to say other than every combat, whether or not I attack or not, I'm going to make a body.
Mm-hmm.
It's passive token generation. You can't really stop unless you want to waste your removal spell for my Loyal Apprentice and not the other player's Thrasios or Gilded Drake on ETB. It's
Or the
I am
Zada, or,
yeah. It's like, oh yeah, you can hit the Zada. I will just recast it for my Storm turn. It's
yeah, it doesn't. There's a lot of you can do this. It doesn't matter though. I see going on.
yeah.
Mog War Marshal, it's another goblin creator. It's got Echo, so it'll make a goblin on ETB and on death. So just make more dudes. Ornithopter, Plague Mirror, same kind of idea as the Iron Mirror. I take it. Just they're rock dudes. They make mana and they give you a body on the battlefield. Plague Mirror.
The infect matters.
Yeah, I was gonna say that Plague Mirror says infect, and you have ways to pump your guys to high heavens. So that's a secret win con right there. Now we're on to some like the juicier storm cards that like once I see these cards hit the battlefield, like my oh shit alarm is like going off. Runaway Steamkin, Young Pyromancer, and Bergie. Like just these seem like absurd magic cards in this deck. Like I feel like you land Zada, you land one of these, you cast a singular cantrip. It doesn't really matter how many dudes you have on the battlefield. Like you're gonna start winning the game right then and there, right?
Uh, like that's and that's the funny thing about the deck is I would love to be like, yeah, I jam a Runaway Steamkin and I win the game, but that it doesn't really work like that. It's more about number of bodies and not quality of bodies.
Okay.
So if I can jam a Steamkin and I have two cantrips in hand, yeah, maybe I'll go for it. A Young Pyromancer all by themselves doesn't really do anything. I have to have the instants and sorceries to like actually cantrip it into high heavens.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that's the whole like meme of the list is every card sucks so bad individually that no one ever looks at my board state and they're like, oh, I need to deal with that Young Pyromancer. It isn't until I've already drawn 17 cards for the turn do you look at my board and go, yeah, that was a problem.
Just the hindsight gotchas. Love that. I love that a lot. All right, Dual Caster Mage we kind of already covered. It's a win piece. I'm a fan of Dual Caster Mage just generically, although I think in this deck we're more than likely holding it for specifically Twin Flame times. I don't think we're like, unless there's like, I don't know, like an expropriate on the stack or something crazy. feel like we're probably never like casting dual caster mage outside of Twin Flame.
Yeah, someone else's Adnaz, someone else's Peer into the Abyss. Yeah, like other than the bomb spells, it's just for Twin Flame and Heat Shimmer.
That's fair. Handwear Garrison seems really at home in this deck. It's a body that makes more bodies. That just helps literally everything. Same thing with Krenko, Tin Street Kingpin. Same idea. It's a dude. It makes more dudes. We like goblins, so making more goblins is a good idea. We're on both of the moons. We're on Magus of the Moon and we're on Blood Moon. That I mono red staple. Nothing really much more beyond that.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to say that I'm like a prison list, and the way I prison out is with two Blood Moon effects, and normally jamming one of them is enough to consider myself a prison list. But yeah, that's the way it goes.
Fair enough. Professional Facebreaker. We're hitting people. We want to make treasures. I imagine this also helps during our storm turns because we can like dockside for a bunch and then Facebreaker to find more cards. Just keep us going. Seems
Well, normally, funny enough, when I'm like cracking treasures into it, it's once I've already resolved the Stormkill Artist for controlled infinite not draws. So a scary card the Zada player in me has to always be worried about is Brain Freeze. Because, I am a storm
shit,
deck.
yeah.
I generate a lot of storm. Someone goes, I've got storm to like 7 or 8. I have a draw 12 cards. Brain Freeze is scary enough for me that I have to sometimes limit my storm. We're gonna get to the card, but I'm also on Skull Clamp as a way to just really control that I'm not overdrawing. I don't accidentally deck myself. And Professional Facebreaker plus Stormkill Artist is like the super super safe. Like there are 2 brain freezes on the table, which is something that has happened to me many times. That's the only piece of their interaction. I have to make as many treasures as possible without drawing cards, and then crack the Facebreaker one at a time to then find the card I need to win the game.
That's something that I feel like you're not going to really like get at first glance with a list like this. Is like Brain Freeze is a very real threat that you have to be aware of.
Yeah.
That's yeah. Sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, yeah, there are a bunch of like not normally like interactive cards that I have to really be worried about, or like common problems. So like, what's the one card? The March of the Swirling Mist.
Oh, okay.
That just on a big enough X, doesn't even matter what you hit, is huge into response to a Zada trigger. Because like if you've got 7 mana just up for a Psych Rift or whatever, but you don't want a Psych Rift on my turn because then the turn after me the person just wins the game. A March of the Swirling Mist does just turn my turn off. Like there's nothing I can do about that. Which a lot of the time March is an offense card for a lot of decks. And it's something I have to be worried about as being used as a defense card.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. All right, continuing on, Simian Spear Guide, Storm deck, like red mana. Krenko Mob Boss seems cracked here.
The ceiling on it is really high, and the floor on it is like never that low. But most of the time, I only ever have to activate this card like once for it to be enough. Because remember, my like margin of, or my critical mass number that my first cantrip will just essentially win me the game is 8. So if I like turn 2 one of my goblin creators, turn 3 Krenko, turn 4 Zada, activate Krenko, I have 1 mana for a cantrip, like the game's already over. But yeah, into a rule of law kind of thing, the Krenko making 18 1/1 goblins does go kind of crazy.
And like that modality there for Krenko specifically, letting you like grow your storm count and like also giving you like inevitability through stacks and rule law seems really really good here.
Yeah.
All right. Stormkill Artist, Treasonous Ogre. We kind of talked about these. Stormkill, like we're storming. This does the thing that you're looking for, plus the addition of like Professional Facebreaker line of just like make treasures, crack all your treasures into it to get around like Brain Freeze effects, or like even like Narsets or Notion Thieves seems really good. Also, I feel like you just get this guy big enough and haste him, you just swing into someone, people die.
Yeah, he doesn't have trample, which is like big cringe, and he only has 2 defense, which is another big cringe part of the card. But yeah, make them big enough. The threat of Stormkiln Artist usually is more than the actual like dealing damage. The really funny thing with this card is the interaction with Pyroblast and Zada. Pyroblast, if you have this card out, Pyroblast becomes a ritual because Red
Shit, that's
Elemental
right.
Blast, yeah, Red Elemental Blast, the target has to be blue. Pyroblast destroys the target if it is blue. So you target Zada, Zada trigger, Stormkiln Artist trigger.
I love that.
Which I do a lot on my combo turn. I jam the Stormkiln, I jam the Zada. I've got 4 creatures or whatever. I'm like, man, I don't have a ritual to cast more spells. Pyroblast targeting Zada goes insane.
I love that. I like all these lines that are like, oh yeah, like this like comes up like frequently enough that this is like a tool in my back pocket. I like that a
Well,
lot.
we haven't really covered like the politicking side
Mm,
of the deck like in depth yet, and we're just really talking about the deck.
sure.
But this is probably one of the most like brain on decks I've played. So like my background in CDH is I've probably played every single deck on the database once. Like
Hmm.
I have tried everything, and you're at my locals and you've seen me show up with probably
Everything, yeah.
everything at least once just because I think it's fun.
Yeah.
Um, and there are a lot of decks that it's like you can turn your brain off on this person's turn and you can turn your brain on during that person's turn. And there's a lot of like thinking that has to be done like around all of these things.
Mhm.
But this deck, like you can't miss anything. Like one stacks piece you forgot about, your game is over. You cast your spark of creativity into a Drannith Magistrate. Cool, you just lost the game because you exiled your Underworld Breach
Mhm.
and your other win con. This is a very brain on deck, and again, because I'm playing such low quality cards, I have to know every single interaction that can gain me advantage.
That makes sense. Yeah, yeah. I mean, low quality cards are going to translate into you have to be very creative with how you use them because I think one of the more fringe aspects of like low quality cards is the fact that there's often modality there or there's like these hidden use cases or niche scenarios that do pop up that are insanely relevant, like your pyroblast on your Zada to ritual in a pinch because realistically you're holding up that pyroblast to land like your Zada or like your big like token producer good like payoff engine piece that is occasionally a decent choke point if you're already storming because you need to be able to maintain the storm. But if it lands, like this is just more ritual.
Exactly.
That's yeah, no, I like that a lot. There's a lot, and that's the other thing is like there's a lot of there's very clearly a lot of thought in here. It's not just okay, these are all like the draw cards, these are all like the protection cards, these are my win pieces. All right, go. Like me and you've gone through this list and we are like, okay, we want to add like this cantrip or this thing here. Like, what's the lowest quality one? And we were talking, we were debating between like one or two, and it came down to like, well, no, Smooth Spirit is just better because one, it gains haste, two, it pumps, three, like Scry's a pseudo draw.
Yeah. Every like I hate to say it, but like as like fringe as a lot of the cantrips especially might feel, every piece of text has been under consideration on why it is. Like I don't want to say this is the tightest list in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not like, you go off of one, you go back onto the other and you've made like a completely different plays list, but I feel for mono red jank Zada Hedron Grinder, which I guarantee anyone listening has heard of like 5 years ago when their buddy was getting into CDH and Googled cheapest CEDH deck available and then haven't seen the list since then. Yeah, this list is pretty tight.
Okay. Yeah. No, I see that. Like, I can't wait to dive into some of these weirdo cantrips. All right. But to round out our creature base, we have Fury removal. Seems pretty straightforward. Yeah. Just three
Yeah,
interaction
it's removal. It also has double strike. So when I'm on the beatdown plan,
gets in there. Mirror Wing Dragon. This card is fucking hilarious because like this is your Zada that you can land through Drannith Magistrate, right?
yeah, this is the again, this is another one of those like if my opponent does not read this card, you are going to kill yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So Mirrorwing Drake has Zada text, except it's for all players and their boards. So I've had a very well-known Kenrith player that this podcast is very familiar with. have a board that was winning. They had their Displacer Kitten and their Eternal Witness, and they went Swords to Plowshares, targeting Mirror-Wing Drake, and I just went trigger. Yeah, that resolves. And they Swords to Plowshare their whole board and got rid of my Mirror-Wing Drake.
That's yeah, because it says that player copies that spell for each other creature they control that spell could target.
Yeah, so for me, it's just another Zada.
Mhm.
But it's now, you can't single target removal this card. You have to Toxic Deluge, Fire Covenant, or
Well, the Fire Covenant,
like
if you do that, it still targets the card.
but this, I'm pretty sure it says that only targets Mirror-Wing Drake.
The only
Yeah.
okay, only yeah, okay.
So if you yeah, you can't even like, oh, you can Psych Rift it. That's the other one, because Psych Rift can't target
Yeah.
things you control.
Or
So yeah, you
Assassin's
can
Trophy
Baby
as
Rift
well.
it. Huh?
Assassin's Trophy is opponents only as well.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Then yeah. So there are
There's decent
more
few-
than I thought single target.
There's still outs to it, but the outs are very narrow.
And you also never want to waste it on my 4/5 dragon.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna Assassin's Trophy that, not the breach that's gonna come down or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. It's so funny. The best thing you can do against it is bounce it, because then you're also only bouncing your things.
Mm-hmm.
But because me, the player, doesn't have to tell you exactly everything it does. You know, it's not uncommon that people will be like, "Oh, what does that do?" And I'm like, for me, it's just another copy of Zada.
Mm-hmm.
No judge, no player is going to be like, "Oh, you lied." But once that Swords to Plowshares is put on the stack and you paid for it, like, then I'm going to read you the card.
Yeah, it's also like there and available. Like you can just reach over and read the card.
Yeah, I've never told someone they can't read my card.
Yeah. All right. Well, that rounds our creatures. Now we're starting to get into kind of like the spicy area of it. So we got the sorceries. This is where we're going to start seeing some of the crazy cantrips. So, let's see. We got Ancestral Anger. Target creature gains trample and +X/+O, where X is 1 plus the number of cards named in Ancestral Anger in the graveyard. But it says draw a card. It's also a pump spell. Seems good.
Boom.
Claim the Firstborn. Talk me through Claim the Firstborn and how relevant has that been for you, because I keep looking at this card and going, this is so close.
Okay, so let's get a couple things out of the way before we really dive into this card.
Mm-hmm.
This is by far the weakest card in the list.
Mm-hmm.
It is currently the 99th card. But there are a few asymmetrical stacks pieces that Claim the Firstborn hits that makes it almost relevant.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a Linvala, or not Linvala, Lavinia.
Yep.
Is a scary card that sucks really, really bad. And what's the other stacks piece that I'm all? Oh, and someone else's Draneth Magistrate.
Okay.
That's the other one. This is claim the first Draneth Magistrate 99.99% of the time.
Okay.
The other niche thing that this does is, for 1 mana, I get another body, which isn't completely irrelevant. But the thing that hoses this deck the hardest is Soulless Jailer. It's a breach deck, so it's Soulless Jailer and Draneth Magistrate. And if I'm able to snag one of those, and then if I'm able to kill it somehow, or just for the Draneth Magistrate being asymmetrical, even if I can just take it for 1 turn, it's usually enough for me to win the game.
Okay, that makes sense. Especially like, there's a number of creatures I feel like I can also rattle off, like Douthie, Archon of Emeria, Spirit of the Labyrinth, like just those like 3 CMC, just like mono white beatdown, like stacks creatures. I feel like taking any one of those will most likely swing you the game.
Yeah.
All right. Gamble, we're red. We need tutors. Renegade Tactics. This card seems pretty good.
Yeah, creature can't block this turn. Also relevant, like more relevant text on my random cantrip is, you've got a blocker. I need to hit you for like 7 more commander damage. Boom. Like, and on my turn, when I'm using it to Zada, oh no, my creatures can't block on my turn. Boo hoo.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Like this card is an ad nauseam. I'm gonna just draw cards.
Yeah.
Spark of Creativity, we kind of went over. You exile the top card of your library, and then you may have Spark of Creativity deal damage to that creature equal to the exile card's CMC. If you don't, you may play that card until end of turn. Does that removal option ever come up enough?
It has. I have targeted Thrasioses and Timnas
Mhm.
with it, just praying to hit a CMC 2 or 3. I've hit Esper Sentinel with it one time. Um, but I would much rather hold this as a cantrip than as a removal spell.
Mhm.
But I've been down bad before, and sometimes you just gotta remove something because you're scared. So
That's reasonable. All right, we got more token generators. We got Dragon Fodder, Krenko's Command. They're just one red sorceries. They do the exact same thing. They make 2 gobos.
goblins specifically,
Goblins
there are a lot
specifically.
of
Yep.
sorceries that make humans or citizens. We are really trying to stay on the goblins for our Krenko, for our Blightstone ritual. Like if they print a power crept young pyromancer, but it makes goblins, Zada goes crazy.
That might be a real possibility in the future. I feel like we're getting closer and closer to a card like that with every
I
passing
hope
day.
so.
All right. This was a weird one when I first looked over your list. That I'm like, I don't understand what this card does. And then you explained it to me. I'm like, this is one of the stupidest cards in the entire list. Finale of Promise. Is wild. So for X red red, you essentially get to cast 2 instants and sorceries from your graveyard. So for 3 mana, we get to cast 2 of our cantrips and draw like 20 cards, right? That's how I'm
Yeah,
understanding this card.
yeah. They are cast as part of the resolution of the spell, so they get put on the stack at the exact same time, and the Zada triggers get put on the stack at the exact same time. So it's not like Finale of Promise resolves spell 1, spell 2. There is no interacting between there. You have to Psych Rift before this resolves.
Okay.
There's a lot of flexibility in it. X is normally 1. X has been 2 before, if my sorcery makes goblins or whatever.
Mhm.
And that's a very common play pattern is I've got a 1 mana cantrip that's an instant. I've got a 2 mana creature creator. I'll make the creatures finale. Things go on the stack. Now priority passes. And then sometimes on in the middle of my storm turn, I will make X10 just so I can do it 4 times instead of 2.
That's so
And
silly.
anytime I get to a point where I can finale on 10, the game is over.
That makes sense. I feel like
Uh,
anytime you cast a finale spell for 10 plus, you're winning the game in some capacity. Either you have enough
yeah,
resources that like the 10 just pushes you over, or you're looping Finale of Devastation for infinite amount of mana to win the game.
yeah.
All right. Twin Flame Heat Shimmer. Kind of went over them. Heat Shimmer in particular seems pretty good here.
Oh, oh, Joe, you've done the regular player thing
Oh,
where you've completely looked over why this card is good in Zada.
okay.
It targets Zada.
Oh shit. Oh wait, hold on. Yeah. Wait, hold on. Both of these target Zada. So you
Uh
just
huh.
you just double up on all your dudes.
Uh huh. I
Oh,
don't hold these for dual caster mage ever. If I've got 4 guys in a Zada, one of them being Stormkiln Artist or Runaway Steamkin or
anything.
any creature,
Yeah.
my Mirrorwing Drake, my Professional Facebreaker, Twin Flame targeting Zada trigger. Oh no, my copy of Zada gets removed or placed to the graveyard because of state-based actions in the legend rule, but the rest of my creatures don't. These are board doublers. I can't tell you how many times after a game someone's gone like, why is Heat Shimmer in the list? All you need is Twin Flame. Because it's 2 copies of Copy My Board. Shut up. You don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I guess I did just fall prey to the classic blunder of like, oh yeah, these are for dualcaster, right?
Yeah, exactly. CEDH players see a lot of CEDH cards as they do one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Swords to Plowshares removes one thing. A lot of people forget that it gains life. Pump. In not this list obviously, but if you can pump something really, 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 really freaking big, and then Swords to Plowshare yourself, you can now add Nas on 40 life again because of Swords to Plowshares. People forget Path to Exile tutors a card. There's a lot of dead text on a card that I, as a player, when playing Zada, can't forget about.
Mhm.
And Twin Flame and Heat Shimmer is one of those examples.
That I like that. I love that a lot. All right. More quote unquote staple stuff. I feel like they kind of just do what they say on the tin. Jessica's Will and Wheel of Fortune. Bit of a spoiler. We're on Breach. We're on Jeweled Lotus. So Wheel makes sense as like a Breach line, right?
I don't ever win the game with Wheel. This
Mhm.
is truly just I will dump my hand on turn 2 really fast,
Gotcha.
and I just need to refill. It also is a really good disruption card. Someone just tutored twice for their win cons, probably Wheel of Fortune.
Okay. Jessica's Will, just good card.
Just as well, good card. It sometimes is I need 3 more cards to get to the next cantrip.
Mhm.
It being a ritual also just like screams I do Zada things.
Gotcha. This is one that stuck out to me the entire time as we were looking through sorceries. Traitorous Greed. Do you want to read me Traitorous Greed real quick?
Yeah, it's a 3 and 1 red sorcery, and it says gain control of target creature until end of
Oh, that
turn.
says target.
Yeah. Untap that creature. It gains haste until end of turn. Add 2 mana of any one color.
Big ritual.
Big ritual grabs Dranith Magistrate. What more could you ask for?
Does everything that we're looking for. Okay. So that wraps us up on the sorceries. Let's dive into the instance. I'm going to go a little bit rapid fire here. Academic Dispute, Crimson Wisp, Expedite. More draw cards.
Draw cards, Academic Dispute, sometimes making your opponent block super relevant. Into a Timna player, into a Crom. Sometimes you just need their flyer or one thing removed, and it is a removal spell.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes really cool.
I think I remember, like, one of the last few games we played with Zada, you were like, hey, it finally came up. I Academic Disputed someone's Dranith Magistrate so that way I could win on my main phase too.
Yeah.
Yeah, comes up. Let's see. Brightstone Ritual. We'd like goblins. This says 1 mana, make 20 mana.
Yeah, and also it's not for just my goblins. So your Dockside Extortionist and your Goblin Welder also makes me mana. That's tough.
Very true. All right. Lightning Bolt, Pyroblast, Red Blast. We covered the sweet tech of Pyroblast, Red Blast, and Lightning Bolt. Just feel like just good cards.
Good cards. Also a win con. I there was a game I played not too long ago where someone put a brain freeze on the stack, and I had my breach had already resolved, and so I let the brain freeze resolve with my draw on the stack, and then lightning bolted them to death. So I could then draw my cards.
I love that. All right. Suit Sprint we kind of covered. It's probably one of the weaker draw spells in the deck. It being a pseudo draw spell, it scries, but it also pumps your dudes and gives them haste.
Yeah.
I feel like giving haste is like really good for like the plan C of the deck of go to combat.
Mm-hmm.
A Braid. Don't we want to kill the Granite Magistrate and other relevant artifacts?
Trinisphere is a killer.
Yep.
I'm a Storm deck. Trinisphere cringe.
Makes sense. Accelerate, Fist of Flame, Stun, Sudden Breakthrough. All feel like just Zada cards, kind of. Anything cute about those?
The +2/+0 on Sudden Breakthrough is disgusting. Why is it not +1/+0? Couldn't tell you. Also, it makes treasures. It's my only Zada ritual card.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then Fist of Flame, obviously we talked about how it just ends games because you're not blocking.
True. Battle Hymn. We make a lot of dudes. This card and Young Peasy, Young Pyromancer go stupid.
Yep.
Let's see. Covers the 2-drops. 3. Boiling Blood. That's a card. Instant for 2 and a red. Target creature attacks this turn if able. Draw a card. Just Zada.
Zada and Dranith Magistrate.
It does kill the Dranith Magistrate. Yeah, that's true. Swing into my Zada. My Zada's gonna eat your dude alive.
Exactly.
Chaos Warp feels like it's like at an all-time premium here.
Yeah. I have random dorks that sometimes I'm willing to gamble a Chaos Warp on. But also
Wait. You can Chaos Warp your Zada and flip your entire board.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that.
Correct. If my board is big enough, sometimes I can make my board even bigger with a Chaos Warp.
That feels really good. SWAT, good card.
Yeah.
Valakut Awakening.
Gas.
Gas, yeah.
Gas.
Pyrokinesis, same idea. I take it as Fury. Like it's free removal, and like
Yeah,
we need it.
I'm on so little interaction that sometimes I have to be on a few less cantrips just so I can claim that I'm trying to not lose the game.
True. One thing that stuck out that is missing here: no Tybalt's trickery.
Card is cringe.
I
I
agree.
don't like. First of all, I'm playing mono red. I think the fact that they gave mono red as a pseudo playable counterspell is really stupid. And me as a player, just like can't bring myself to play counterspells in mono red. But also, I think more often than not, um, that card usually trips into something just as scary or scarier than the card I'm countering, because all of my interaction pieces, my pyroblast, my red blast, those are all to protect myself.
Mhm.
Will I counter a game-winning spell? Yes, because I want to win the game. But I don't ever intend on using any piece of interaction unless that interaction is to help me win the game. And Tybalt's trickery, in my experience, more often than not, will either maybe stop me from losing the game right then, right that turn, but will flip into something that'll still stop me from winning the turn. Because especially because you're the one casting the Tybalt trickery, if they hit a removal spell or a bounce spell, they're going to target one of your things because you're the one who just cast the counter spell from stopping them from winning the game.
Now that about lines up with my own personal philosophy as a Tybalt trickery. I have never liked the card. Same thing with what is it? The red kind of second chaos warp wild magic
Oh,
surge.
Wild Match Surge,
I hate
yeah.
both of those cards. Both of those cards are they feel like traps or like the most like I'm only turboing. This card exists purely to protect my win or get me across the finish line, and I literally do not care that it could possibly lose me in the game if the gamble is wrong. And
Yeah.
it's too high variance. I feel like for those cards, so I generally like it when lists don't include it. I feel like it's a signal to me that like okay, there's some like actual thought put into here rather than like this removes or this protects purely
Yeah.
that.
And in a format where everyone is playing very, very high card quality, like I'm going to do everything I can to keep someone from being able to get a high quality card out
Yeah, for sure.
as much as
For sure,
possible.
like sure, you can counter like the consecrated things or whatever, like, but you could flip them into a Hullbreaker Horror.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, I
Oh no, you countered my swords to plowshares. I have breach now,
yeah,
so it's just like golly.
yeah. All right, so that wraps us up for instance. Artifacts looks pretty standard to me. Any like standout ones that you want to like cover or like we missed or deserve some like special attention or anything? Because this all looks
Uh
pretty standard to me.
yeah, there are three artifacts I'd like to talk about a little more than you would probably talk about any of these.
Mhm,
The Mox Diamond. This is not a list that needs a Mox Diamond.
mhm,
Don't let anyone tell you your list needs a Mox Diamond, especially this one.
mhm,
I will say though, this is one of the lists where I have definitely won the game because I was running a Mox Diamond, and if I weren't running a Mox Diamond, I don't think I would have won that game.
mhm.
Because when I'm drawing 15 cards at a time, I'm drawing 7 cards at a time. I brick on a lot of lands because I am on a 29 land count deck because I need to be able to get through the early and mid game essentially without doing anything other than playing lands. But when I need the one more mana um, to keep things going, I never not have the land, and being able to go Mox Diamond pitch this has felt very real.
Okay, yeah, that makes
Um,
sense. Same philosophy with Adnod is you want that high density of free mana to keep going.
yeah. Skull Clamp is a trap card if you don't know what you're doing, because the tendency with a lot of people, because I hand this deck out like crack to people.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, please play this deck. Mostly because I want people to be like, oh my god, this is so cool. But for people to realize that like this is not a meme deck. This deck is very hard. And Skull Clamp is one of those very hard cards to use correctly. Because you want bodies for Zada, but you want to kill the bodies to draw 2 cards. So the ability to like understand when you should be killing a 1/1, when you should be clamping a 1/1, and when you should be holding your things for Zada spells is really important. More often than not, I will skull clamp. I'll slap it on Zada, so if you kill Zada, I at least get to draw 2 cards. And I'm not really using skull clamp until I've reached past my critical mass number, that 8 number in my head, and I am now just trying to par my board down. Or if I'm, I've only got 20 cards left in my library, and now I have to start paying mana to like control draw cards.
Okay.
And then the last one is Ruby Medallion. This is a free piece of advice to anyone who's listening. If I sit across from you and I turn one or turn two a Ruby Medallion, you have to counter it. This card makes the difference between winning and losing. This is never something you should feel bad for removing. If you do not remove this card, I am winning the game.
Yeah.
My margins are already not that tight as a Zada player. My margins become free with a Ruby Medallion out. This is the scariest card to see in the deck.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like, we're on so many 1-mana cantrips, and we're on a decent amount of, like, 2-mana cantrips that, like, you just double the amount of stuff you can do. Also, Zada comes down earlier. You don't want that. No one wants the Zada come down earlier.
Exactly.
All right. Enchantments, I feel like we kind of cover them. Breach, Blood Moon, Possibility Storm. The Possibility Storm text seems really, really cool. I like it a lot. Blood Moon, Breach, kind of just feel at home in this deck. Nothing really I feel like that's special or like needs to talk about there, as far as I understand it, right?
Yep.
All right, cool. Land count. We're on 28, 29 plus the NBFC, Valakut Awakening. We are on a significant amount of creature lands, which makes a lot of sense. We're on Blinkmoth Nexus. We are on Carekeep to pump out dudes. We're on Mishra's Factory. We're on Dwarven Mine, which seems really... I like that we're on Dwarven Mine. That's really funny. I also like that you're on Handwear Battlements to pair with the Handwear Garrison. Have you melded before?
I would never meld.
You would never meld. Okay.
This land is in there because it gives haste.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh wait, that's target creature. Is that a spell or ability? It's instant or sorcery.
It's spell. Yeah.
Okay.
But no. I am unironically on this, like, no text on this card matters. Even if the card didn't make mana, if it just said for a red and tap, target creature gains haste, I would still be on it. Just because my creatures having haste, like, consistently really matters.
Okay.
If you look at the backside of this card, it makes the same number of bodies. It just makes them bigger, which I would rather just be, because I'd also like to point out that when you meld it, as far as I'm aware, and the way it's been explained to me, is it doesn't have haste. So you have to wait the turn to swing, even if you meld.
I think so, unless the card specifically has, like, haste on it, far as if I can remember correctly, because I played during Standard at this time, so I'm like vaguely familiar with how it works. I'm pretty... That sounds correct.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, is I never ever actually want to make this the Eldrazi thing. I just want it to give haste when I want it to give haste, and I want the creature to make bodies.
Fair enough. All right. Soken's-On, Urza Saga both seem at home in this deck. Soken's-On makes tokens. Urza Saga finds us Jeweled Lotus, or, like, I don't know, Soul Ring seems good enough, especially for monocolor.
Yeah, Jeweled Lotus most of the time. Sometimes a Mox Opal if I need the colored mana. Yeah, Skull Clamp is the only, like, cheeky grab. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, apart from that, like, this feels pretty straightforward in terms of the land base.
And Command Beacon.
Oh yeah, Command Beacon, that also seems really good. Just a way for us to reduce, quote unquote, Zada's mana cost if it gets killed a bunch and we still have the ability to go for it, or the ability to play through, like, a Drannith Magistrate. Seems pretty straightforward to me.
Yep.
Yeah, that's basically the whole deck list, and I'll make sure it's in the description of this episode. You did want to talk about the politics for this deck, and I'm actually very interested in that as well, because you pilot this deck in a very particular way.
Yes. The only way, and I encourage you, proxy this list up, play it with your friends. You can't try and win the game with this list. You can't even look like you're trying to win the game with this list. I have taken this list to 2 majors. I didn't pilot it the first time. I let my buddy pilot it because he was getting into CDH and wanted to try something. He won 2 games up in Bellingham at an Adortus event.
Mm-hmm.
And I took this down to Portland, and I told him and I told myself, don't ever push any advantage. Always be fourth when you're evaluating board states. I will hold a turn 1 mana crypt.
Mm-hmm.
If I can go land, like even in the situation where I can go land mana crypt Burgie, I won't do that. If I can go like mana crypt Ironmere, I won't do that. I will never ever do anything that pushes me ahead, because a single piece of removal, a single stacks piece targeted for me is normally enough to put me out of winning on turn 5 or 6, because this deck will consistently win on 5 or 6. So
Okay.
instead of running counter spells, I run my mouth to try and win games. Like,
I run my mouth. Yeah, you fucking do.
um, I will evaluate board state. I will, this is, some people have called me scummy. Some people have called me a genius for this. When I go to a blind tournament I've never been to and no one recognizes me, I will act like I have never played Magic before. I won't lie. I won't say anything that is untrue, but I will fumble. I will ask how many mulligans I'm allowed to have. I will I will ask other people to help me understand my Zada trigger. I will try and act as dumb as humanly possible. I will mispronounce cards.
No,
I
you don't.
will ask how many land drops I get. Um, I own a Lion's Eye Diamond. I own some of the more expensive cards. I on purpose proxy them when I go to proxy friendly events so people don't think I know what I'm doing. And I am able to win lots and lots of games because people will ask me, what are my win cons? And I say, well, I'm mono red. My default win con is Dual Caster Mage Twin Flame. It's second main phase, and I'm winning the game with Aetherflux Reservoir. I try not to do it so much anymore.
Mm-hmm.
One, because people know me now, and two,
The check is out. The check is out.
it is a little, I won't lie, it's a little scummy, but it doesn't break like the barrier of like CEDH ethics for me.
Yeah.
But I will try to play as unhonestly as possible on my board state. So you never ever look at my board and you're holding a Swords to Plowshares and go, I'm gonna target that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd say that's like on the edge, like, because you're not breaking anything, you're not hurting anyone, you're not really like doing anything bad. It's just like social politics at just a different level.
Yeah.
Like, especially if it's a blind event, like, you do have that like level of anonymity. Well, you are now the Zada guy in our area. So that part's taken away a little bit, but like I do like the idea of like you fumble so easily to like any sort of targeted hate that you need to play smarter. So because I was questioning myself, I'm like, why would you never like turn 1 land mana crypt Bergie? But then you answer that question with, well, immediately like the Sax piece is coming down and people immediately all hold up removal and counter spells for me, so I can't do that, because otherwise I just don't win in that case. And that makes a lot of sense. Like, I feel like that's something that a lot of like the turbo crowd doesn't do. Maybe not doesn't know, but they just don't do that because, well, these cards are dead in my hand, I may as well just throw them out there. But as soon as you pull attention to yourself, your win percentages go down.
Yeah. It's kind of like the mental misstep paradox.
Mm-hmm.
If I have a turn 1, if I'm player 1, turn 1, and I have a soul ring, and I'm not going to do anything with that soul ring on turn 1, do I cast it, or do I hope someone else casts their turn 1 soul ring, and then they get mental misstepped? Yeah. Another piece of really strong politicking in this list is just having very solid just understanding of everyone else's decks. One of the greatest strengths I've had as a politicker just in general is because I have played every single list. I can point to a card that some people might not know and go, no, that's a combo card. So, Get Rog has kind of fallen out of fashion. Someone will go, I'll tutor for Dakmor Salvage, and I have to go, oh, by the way, they're winning the game.
Mm-hmm.
Or a Timna player, will jam a Hope of Giripur, and I'll go, like, yeah, that draws them a card because it's a flyer, but also it turns off all of your interaction. Having just solid threat assessment and being able to point the power finger in any other direction and being able to just pretty much lay out someone else's game plan in front of other players is really powerful in a way to scare other players. Because when you sit down with Blue Farm and someone goes, "Oh, Tim Necrom, that's an interesting pairing," being able to go, "Yeah, but they resolve one piece of or they resolve one intuition and they win the game," is just a really strong way to keep people off of your back. I have had people not crack treasures into my dockside because I went, yeah, my dockside making 15 is like bad, but I'm mono red. What's the difference between, 13 and 15 treasures? But if you crack your treasures now, you're not going to have them for the Bruce Tarl Thrasios, the Dawnwaker's turn.
Mm-hmm.
And they're actually going to win the game. And then I'm 55 cards deep. I've twin flamed my Zada into 3 different copies of Dockside, and then you can't crack the treasures. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. That is something that I have absolutely 100% wholesale stolen from your politics book. Is like no, I'm gonna explain what you do, and then I'm gonna be like, I'm playing Rakdos bullshit. Like I'm playing Chainer. I'm playing this nothing card. Like really.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm gonna resolve this Hasted Welder, and I'm gonna discard a Bolus of Citadel. Don't mind me.
Yeah. Or just being able to just like, I am playing a very honest deck. Like
Oh
at the
yeah,
end of the
yeah.
day, like the win is coming when it's coming.
Mm-hmm.
I just have to get you to second guess yourself one time before, your targeted removal on top of it. I get 2 more Zada triggers.
Mm-hmm.
And now it doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, it's a specific play style that I think you have to like be able to go into. Like I feel like there's like, okay, pick up the deck and play it, and then there's you have to kind of like suit on like a personality, quote unquote, I guess, or like you have to put on like a specific mindset into like playing a deck like this, or like something that is just generally like fragile.
Yeah. And the reason I like this deck is because it's not like Godo. It's not like what's the other it's not like Magda.
Yeah.
Where you have one game plan and your game plan revolves around 2 or 3 cards.
Mm-hmm.
If you Praetor's Grasp the Magna's Clock of Omens or Praetor's Grasp the Helm of the Host, the Godo player doesn't get to do anything else. The Magna player now has to go to their plan B and C, which are awful. My plan A, B, and C are all right next to each other on what they do and how they do it. And then, because at the end of the day, I am just drawing cards. Like that is my game plan. And then I sometimes just stumble into a win.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to argue that is really strong. Being like, CDH players hate losing. They hate losing more than any other like competitive thing I've ever seen. Like Smash players don't hate losing that much. Like Yu-Gi-Oh players don't even hate losing as much as CEDH players hate losing.
I'll debate that, but continue.
Fair enough. But if I can look someone in the eye and go, that pact you're holding, you're going to lose the game unless you use that pact right here, right now on this dockside extortionist that isn't mine. If you want to throw the game, you can. That is a question I can pretty much bait out all interaction out of a player by saying, if you want to throw the game, you totally can. It's like, it's a little aggressive, but I'm also not wrong.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. And that's where like the good politicking lies. That's something that Atlas does a lot, and that I have like tried to mimic from everybody, is like, sure, listening to you will ultimately be my downfall. However, you're not wrong. Like this counter spell needs to be put on the stack against this whatever, because if this spell resolves, we lose the game. However, I am letting my interaction go to then let you go out of the game. Like it's the whole like spite making king play thing, whatever, that CDH tends to fixate on, where like at a certain point, like we all have to make the best play we can. The best play sometimes is just, I have to counter this thing and then pass the turn because I have to pay for my pack trigger,
Yeah. And then Zada has to do the opposite. It's, I'm not trying to bait your counterspell. It's, I need to convince you to hold it.
Mm-hmm.
That is the difference between good politicking in Zada and great politicking in Zada. Is, can I convince my opponent to hold their swords to plowshares?
Mm-hmm.
Can I get them to not big rift on my turn just long enough so I can win the game.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a level of politicking. Even I, after playing like almost 6 months of Zada, have not been able to like perfect, is getting someone to hold their removal so I can win the game.
Now I'm thinking about all the times that I've held my removal against Zada, when I'm like, I should just let it fly every time. Just don't listen to someone when they say, "Oh, you can just hold it." No, just do it.
Well, a classic example on I'm not going to name any names,
Mm-hmm.
but there was a dinosaur player I was playing with at Portland, and I had a turn 3 Zada, or I had a turn 1 Young Pyromancer and a turn 3 Zada, and they had a Mana Drain. And they flashed the Mana Drain, said, "Do I counter this?" And I looked them right in the eye and said, "Well, Gitrog is coming down next turn. Do you want to counter my 4 CMC goblin that does nothing unless I have other creatures, or do you want to counter the Gitrog monster that doesn't get to win the game unless they have Gitrog monster?" And that player looked me in the eyes and went, "You're right." I then proceeded to win the next turn. So it's just one of those moments where I'm not wrong, but also like,
You can't let me get
could,
away with it.
well, yeah, it's like, well, could the Gitrog monster player win on their turn or on the next turn after they Gitrog resolved? Probably, but it's, what do you do?
Yeah, this dinosaur player sounds bald and annoying. Yeah. Yeah, no, that was a learning moment. I feel like in that particular moment I was very much damned if I do, damned if I don't. Like, it didn't really it if I let one of those things resolve, the thing that was resolving was winning, so it was just kind of like, well, may as well get one more mana, I guess.
And then it's like, and no one gets mad at the
No.
mono red player.
No, they're playing Zada. What are they doing?
Yeah, what's a Zada?
What do they do?
Exactly. And that at the end of the day is all I'm trying to do. Is I am trying to make sure you have no clue what I'm doing till I've won the game.
That's a very potent strategy. It's a very potent strategy indeed. All right. Well, any like closing thoughts, closing remarks, stuff that we didn't cover about the list that we kind of like fumbled over, or you feel like need more credence?
I guess the only like closing statements I have, and it's not so much for Zada, but just for like deck builders and people who are trying to like play something that their friends don't say is very good.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably not very good what you're trying to build, like in a vacuum.
Mm-hmm.
Like people who are trying to make new commanders, maybe that aren't very good. Like the new Narset doesn't really look that good. There are a bunch of like commanders from Lord of the Rings that look like they're just right there on CEDH viability. Bro, do not listen to them. As someone who plays mono red card that was standard legal like 10 years ago,
Oh, don't say that. Oh my.
you are able to make anything work with the right 99 cards and good politicking. If this episode's lesson is anything, it is play what you think is fun. There is no better time in CDH playing what you may consider a subpar deck optimally. Being able to look at a blue farm player in the face and go, "Good game, thanks for letting me win," is the best feeling in the world. This deck has taken down 3 blue farm lists. 2 of them were in the same pod. So don't let anyone tell you that any commander you're trying to make work is unviable.
Yep, and that's the Mana on the Rocks like credo and special right there. That's the reason why I wanted to do local brews. Is like any deck can do well. You just have to build it right, and there is definitely like a right way to build a deck and a not correct way to build a deck. And then like just mindset and like politicking and like individual player skill. All right. Well, if that's all our closing remarks, then I think that's going to wrap us up. Tyler, fantastic time talking with you. I'm glad we finally got to do this episode and tell the people what did Zada do?
Zada did what to blue farm?
All right. We'll catch you next time, everybody. Take it easy.
Later.